gender binary is impacting all of us. It's just that those of us on one side of the equation are more acutely aware of it and are actually blowing a whistle for everyone to understand how these structures are fundamentally rooted in alienating people from their own natural empathy, their own intimacy with themselves and with one another. And so I find that often it's a conservative strategy to say, how do we become more inclusive of trans and non-binary people? Because what that does is it makes the crisis of gender minoritarian. It says it's just this community over here that's suffering from the gender binary. And what I've continually tried to demonstrate in my work is that all of us are suffering from the gender binary, that all of us are marked for perpetual and perennial slow death from the gender binary. And what I'm curious is, how is the gender binary harming you? I know how it's harming me, but I don't think that that changes the status quo if it's just some of us becoming eloquent in the violence of gender binarism. What I'd really like to see is that everyone develops a narrative and a practice to how gender norms are actually detrimental to their own expansion. Because what norms are idealizations of people. They're holograms, they're illusory. They require us to live in the realm of ought or should, and we become exiled from presence. Norms actually require that word that you were speaking, perfection. Norms come from eugenic imaginations that believe that people only have worth and dignity by achieving certain metrics, when in fact I believe that everyone has worth and dignity and lovability simply for being, not for doing. So if we take that as our approach, that all life is sacred, even lives that we don't understand, then we have no choice actually but to dismantle the stranglehold that the gender binary has in all of our consciousness. And so what dismantling the gender binary looks like is not actually just about including trans and non-binary people. It's about removing gender norms from the way that we relate to each other. So when we see people, instead of saying, you've had an experience of power because you look like what I perceive a man to be, what I do is I say, tell me the story of masculinity in your life. How was masculinity enforced into you? How did it feel? What did it feel like whenever you weren't allowed to feel in public? And I'm not going to dismiss that as a legitimate form of grief. I'm going to acknowledge that actually on all sides of the equation, being gendered is non-consensual. It's unfortunate. It's deeply troublesome. And then I'm going to ask, who do you want to be? How do you want to be treated? And see that as actually an act of care. I think that what frustrates me the most right now about these political times we're in, and it feels very important to emphasize that I'm coming to from a country which on the one hand professes to be a safe haven for LGBTQ people, and then yet has over 500 bills in our legislative session specifically targeting trans and gender nonconforming people. And what this is a mass traumatizing event, which we know is actually going to have generational impact. I grew up being bullied by my peers, not by my politicians. But as trans and non-binary issues become the form with which right-wing projects coalesce themselves, this is going to have a mass generational traumatizing effect, not just on trans people, but on everyone, because a stringent idea of gender is being reinforced in a way that is anti-human, anti-vulnerability, and anti-connection. Why does this happen? It's because the temptation of gender is that it keeps people chasing a carrot on a stick. Because here's the secret around gender norms. We'll never be man enough. We'll never be masculine enough. We'll never be feminine enough. And in fact, we can be blamed for that. Rather than giving people actual resources, actual justice, circumventing some of the biggest issues facing our times, like climate violence, what governments can do is make us chase gender norms forever. And then they can blame us and we can blame ourselves. The reason why I don't have stable housing is because I'm not masculine enough. The reason I couldn't maintain a job is because I'm not masculine enough. The reason why my relationship didn't work out is not because of poverty. It's not because of displacement. It's because of my faults, because I was not feminine enough. And so that's why I want everyone to understand that the stakes of these contemporary gender crises are actually deeply conservative because they reinscribe individualism put culpability and blame on individual failure to perform gender norms rather than on structural failures. And so that's why I describe trans issues as a weapon of mass distraction, because what they're doing is allocating millions of dollars that could be going into creating more robust, trauma informed healthcare for all people, that could be going into creating affordable housing, could be going into ending climate violence, into policing and scapegoating trans and non binary people. In other words, people are shooting themselves in their foot.